And a similar story in the U.S. In recent weeks, police have arrested nearly 2,200 people during the pro-Palestinian protests at college campuses across the country. At times, the encounters have turned violent, police sometimes using riot gear, pepper spray, flashbang devices, even armored vehicles to try and clear out student encampments on public and private universities. Most demonstrators are calling for their schools to divest from Israel. University officials have varied in their response, from taking successful efforts to de-escalate tensions to calling in the police to storm the buildings. On Thursday, President Joe Biden insisted that order must prevail. Take a listen.
It's against the law when violence occurs. Destroying property is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest. Threatening people, intimidating people, instilling fear in people is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Dissent is essential to democracy, but dissent must never lead to disorder or to denying the rights of others so students can finish the semester and their college education.
Joining me on the set is our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Hello to you, Doug.
I will.
President Biden speaking perhaps to those protesters, but I'm guessing they're not going to be listening.
Yeah, a lot of that message, for better or for worse, Will, is falling on deaf ears among the protesters. They were very brief remarks. He was under enormous pressure to say anything at all. He didn't really take reporters' questions afterwards. It is really will be seen as the absolute bare minimum that he was asked to do to comment on what's going on. He couldn't just stand there and ignore it. The problem is look, these protests, as you know, have underscored the extremely deep divisions, the deep polarization, to use a very common word now in U.S. politics and elsewhere, the polarization when it comes to U.S. longstanding policy towards Israel, and notably this policy of practically unconditional support. Sure, there have been nuances there. Sure, Joe Biden has ramped up the pressure on Netanyahu in call after call to make it clear he wants the aid to come through, that they need to change their approach in Gaza, that they need to take all measures to protect civilians before any sort of ground invasion would be even vaguely feasible in Rafah, the southernmost city. But like I said, for the youth protesting, they simply do not understand what is it about the U.S. and the Israeli relationship. They don't understand the reasons behind this unconditional support. Maybe an older generation has a better historical perspective. Maybe they do understand why the U.S., especially an older president, Biden being 81 years old, he grew up, he was born before the creation of Israel in 1948. He has a very sort of personal, lifelong affinity for Israel and an understanding perhaps of its history. The younger generation has seen the horrible suffering in Gaza, the results of this catastrophic war on both the humanitarian level, the loss of human life, and they simply do not understand why the U.S. administration has not come down harder from their perspective. Obviously, other people will see it very differently and say that he has been very much cognizant of their demands and what they've been doing. But like you said, falling on deaf ears, and this does ring an alarm, sort of, sound an alarm on the election coming up, because he desperately needs those voters. He can't afford to lose that demographic, the younger 18 to 29-year-olds.
And classes are wrapping up at many of these universities. Yeah. Do you think the protests will also be wrapping up, or are they going to spread?
The White House certainly hopes so. Right, you're right. Columbia University, where all of these protests began, back in April, they right now will, I think the last classes are May 4th, tomorrow, and the commencement, the graduation is on May 15th, so in less than 2 weeks' time. So the hope in the White House and other spheres in Washington is that they will sort of fizzle out. The students will go away on summer holiday, and when they will not ramp up again in the fall, or at least will be in a very different place come autumn. But the fact of the matter is, there's a long time still for things to percolate, and we've only seen, as I've said, the continuing to gain momentum. Police are continuing to break up protest sites. Another Ivy League school even joining the fray, Dartmouth, but its tents were taken down even before they had a chance to really set them up. So the response is getting tougher, but there is no sign that these protests are simply going to go away today or tomorrow. The problem for Biden is, I'll just note this for our viewers, the coalition that brought him to power in 2020, 18 to 29-year-old voters voted for him by a 24-point margin. Fast forward to today, a recent NBC News poll shows Biden leading Trump by 1 point, 43% to 42% in that exact same age demographic, 18 to 29. Those are simply poll numbers. Take them for what they're worth, Will. But a lot of White House officials, I can guarantee you, are scrutinizing those polls. And yes, they are running scared from them, and they know they have to do something to change opinion, and they have to do it pretty quickly among that younger demographic.